Hello everybody, Raven Knight here. I want to start off by apologizing, first of all. I know that I'm doing another response video to a CBR article, and this one probably isn't going to be as meaningful to as many of you because it's about One Piece and not about fantasy in general, but I still wanted to do this. Both the fantasy article and this article were sent to me at about the same time, and after reading both of them, I felt the need to respond to both, so that's why we're doing this. And I'll give you the caveat that this one isn't quite as egregious or mind-numbingly stupid as the previous one, but it's still something that I wanted to respond to. One Piece is perhaps I feel it is the best anime made, and it is definitely my favorite. It's so long running that I know it scares some people into watching, but I do recommend at least picking up a manga of it, or, just watching the first few arcs, just to get a feel for it, because it really is a very entertaining and enjoyable, and sometimes even touching series. I've defended it 3 times on this channel. Once from a video from Wisecrack, which just completely misunderstood the philosophies of One Piece, and twice from CBR articles trying to talk about why Nami and Robin are, not that good of characters. And this time, they've made an article where it's all about these 10 tropes in One Piece that just don't work. Now, here's the thing. Every anime has tropes that don't work. Every show or product will have a trope or something that just kind of falls flat. It happens. And even I am willing to acknowledge some of the flaws in One Piece, and we'll get to that near the end. But I took a look at these tropes, and for the vast majority of them, I gotta wonder, what is CBR smoking? So, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into this and see what CBR has to say about the top 10 worst tropes of One Piece. 10 worst One Piece tropes. One Piece has had a lot of good things going for it, but these tropes are some of the worst parts of this Big 3 series, by Isaac Handy, published November 12, 2022. With over 1,000 episodes and chapters, One Piece is the best-selling manga of all time. Ichiro Oda has consistently been able to wow audiences with new and distinct adventures. However, with just so much content, it's not surprising that some reused plot points and tropes can get a little wearisome at times. Considering the size of the story, it's understandable that not every Joker story thread lands for the audience. Most of the time, these moments are just passed by or forgotten about. But when they're constantly reused, they become a bit more problematic. These tropes are the worst in One Piece. Not much to say here, guys. I just hate the word problematic. It's a buzzword that essentially means prepare for epic whinging. Number 10. Everyone's got a tragic backstory. A tragic backstory is a great motivator for a villain or a hero. They can flesh out the character and give them understandable reasons for their actions. However, One Piece has dipped into the tragic backstory motivator too many times. Almost every member of the Straw Hats has a tragic background. Between dead mothers, mentors, and childhood friends, some of these stories are introduced several hundred episodes after the character's been firmly established. Whole Cake Island also introduced tragic backstories for Katakuri, Big Mom, Pudding, Pound, Brule, Pedro, and a whole new one for Sanji. There are really only so many times fans can cry before they become numb. I'm not tired of it. In fact, I don't think anyone is that tired of it. Oda is the god of tearjerkers. This is the man who said, I'm going to make you cry for a boat. He has the power to make us connect deeply with characters, even ones that we didn't think we would. He took a crew of crazy characters and made us not only feel for them, but connect with them, long to be on their journey and see it completed. If we were really sick of tragic backstories, I don't think the show would still be going so strong. As for the Whole Cake Island arc bit, with the exception of Sanji and Big Mom, all the characters you mentioned were introduced in the same arc. Granted, I don't think Sanji needed a second tragic backstory. I agree with you on that. I think that the one he had was enough, but it wasn't a deal breaker for me. You also say that a lot of their tragic backstories don't appear until hundreds of episodes after they've been introduced. With Sanji, yes, this backstory in Whole Cake Island was introduced a very long time after he was introduced, granted. But who else? Who else didn't get their backstory introduced until hundreds of episodes after they were introduced? Methinks you reach a little too far here. The Sanji backstory, I agree, probably was unnecessary. But all the others? You're saying that a lot of the characters who appeared in the Whole Cake Island arc shouldn't have gotten their backstories told in the same arc? That's a little confusing. Number 9. Luffy's stomach keeps getting him into trouble. The protagonist with a near-infinite stomach has been a fairly common anime trope since the days of Dragon Ball. Luffy's stomach, especially in filler arcs, tends to get him into trouble that the rest of the Straw Hats have to get him out of. Whether it's infiltrating a marine base for food, getting poisoned, making a rival over a cherry pie, or running into a marine captain in a restaurant, there's no shortage of ways Luffy's appetite can manage to create problems. The first couple of times were certainly humorous, but seeing it happen again and again can get really tiresome. Not to sound like a broken record, but I'm not tired of it. It's a part of his character. Luffy is a glutton. Food is often the most important thing on his mind. He inhales food. Literally, he heals from eating meat. This guy is a food-eating machine, and it's part of the charm and character that he carries. Imagine if, when Luffy showed up after 2 years time skip, like if he showed up after his 2 years, Sanji offers to cook him a meal, and Luffy goes, "No thanks, I'm trying to cut back." That would be the most shocking thing to ever happen in One Piece. I'm pretty sure it would give everyone on the crew a complete heart attack, which is saying a lot since Brook doesn't have a heart to begin with.
It's a skull joke!
It's a skull joke! I get it!
The point is, these character tropes and quirks are part of his identity. His stomach can get them into trouble, and it can also get them out of trouble. It's an aspect of his character that can define his decision-making and choices. I really don't see the problem with it. Number 8. Ignorance is bliss. For being one of the most powerful pirate crews on the Grand Line, many of the Straw Hats really don't have much of an understanding of the world around them. Luffy's a classic example of the ignorant but strong trope, and he's not the only one, as Zoro, Chopper, and Frankie often fall into this category as well. Having 1 or 2 characters in this mold is good for a laugh, but when it's several members at a time, it becomes more annoying than funny. Thankfully, the Straw Hats have a couple of competent voices of reason to balance things out a little. You are aware that you just contradicted yourself, right? You said that the Straw Hats are made up of mostly ignorant characters, but thank goodness there are some competent ones to balance them out. Well then, I must wonder, what is your problem? If the competent characters balance out the incompetent characters, does that not take care of the problem? In fact, isn't that kind of the point of One Piece? Everything is kind of a mystery. One island is a whole new adventure. Not fully understanding the world is part of the charm because you're going to learn about it. The Grand Line is one of the most undiscovered places in all of the world. Take Sky Island, that Sky Island arc. The crew had trouble even believing it could exist, and Robin was the only one who tried to point out, if the log pose, their compass, is pointed to the sky, we have to trust the pose, because that's a fundamental rule of the Grand Line.
No matter how crazy things get or how weird the situation is we find ourselves in, never doubt the log pose, out here on the water. This is one of the most steadfast and unbreakable rules. What we should be doubting is the common sense we all have that tells us an island cannot exist in the sky on an ocean of nothing.
The ignorance of the crew in certain circumstances, like that one, make perfect sense. Now, you use Zoro, Chopper, Frankie, and Luffy as your examples of the strong but ignorant trope. What are they ignorant of? The rules of the world around them? Well, let's consider that Chopper spent most of his life on Drum Island and is still fascinated by the world. Zoro doesn't care much about the runnings of the world and follows his instincts and honor code. Frankie actually knows quite a bit about the world, but he doesn't really let on. I'm genuinely struggling to understand what's bad about any of this. You said it yourself, there are some incompetent characters on the crew, but there are competent characters to balance them out, so what's the issue? What's the problem? Are we forgetting Nami and Robin are both very competent characters? Are we forgetting that Sanji is also competent? He knows way more about the Grand Line than he ever let on before? Come on. Number 7. The bad guys have terrible aim. One Piece's Marines suffer from the classic Stormtrooper effect, a disorder named after the incompetent Star Wars villains that make the bad guys incapable of aiming a shot. Despite chasing Luffy and the gang for years, the Marines can't seem to hit anyone who isn't bulletproof. Their cannon fire isn't much better. Not that anyone wants to see any of the Straw Hats get hurt, but it does remove some of the tension when they can be surrounded by Marines and the audience has no doubt they'll emerge unscathed. A few more injuries over the years might make the routine Marine chase a little more interesting. Much like the Stormtroopers in Star Wars, I really don't mind this, and I don't know many who complain about this. I mean, it's not any different from why Nameless Ninja and Naruto always throw kunai where they should have access to powerful magic powers. It's only really an issue if you let it be one. But okay, I guess if that's an issue you take, then you're free to have that. Okay, fine. Number 6. The Straw Hats keep running into hidden royalty. One of Luffy's first adventures on the Grand Line involved helping a secret princess Vivi restore order to her country of Alabasta. This arc was so popular that the series would repeat the trope of a character secretly being a prince or princess several times. Even members of the Straw Hats have secretly been members of royal families. Hidden royalty has played crucial roles in Alabasta, Dressrosa, Zoe, Whole Cake Island, and Wano, making some of these story arcs feel like copies of each other. Okay, you know what? I agree that Alabasta and Dressrosa felt eerily similar, and I think a lot of people pointed that out too. Both are desert kingdoms, with a king deposed by a warlord of the sea. A brother of Luffy's appears to help the Straw Hats. Luffy fights a warlord to save the kingdom and assists a princess in reuniting with her father, and the arc ends with the Marines giving chase to the Straw Hats and barely escaping, with the head Marine in charge mouthing off to the brass because how they didn't want to live a lie. Believe me, many people saw the similarities in Alabasta and Dressrosa, but you are aware that the space between Alabasta and Dressrosa is massive, right? It's not like Oda just said, okay, I really liked Alabasta, so for the next arc, I'm going to do the same thing. Between Alabasta and Dressrosa, you have Jaya, Skypiea arc, the Davy Back arc, the Water 7 arc, the Enies Lobby arc, Thriller Bark, the Sabaody Archipelago, Amazon Lily, Impel Down, Marineford. Then you have the 2-year time skip, which brings us to the crew's return. Then the Fishman Island arc. Then Punk Hazard. And finally, you get to Dressrosa. So there was a lot between the two mimicked arcs. And the repeating of disguised royalty after that, well, I blame that more on Oda forcing himself into writing too many arcs interconnected with one another to tie in the Emperor Saga. And trust me, I have issues with the Emperor Saga. We'll get to it. But none of them have to do with the royalty and disguise trope. Was anyone else bothered by that? My One Piece fans in the audience, were you bothered by the fact that there were a few cases where there seemed to be similarities? Did y'all have any problems with that, like the hidden royalty thing? I didn't really see enough of that to be bothered. In fact, the only 3 princesses that I really remember much were the ones in Alabasta, Dressrosa, and Fishman Island. But other than those, I don't remember much about it to really care. Number 5. Joy Boy is just another chosen one trope. Between the will of D and his connection to Joy Boy, Luffy is becoming more and more of a chosen one. Someone who will rise up against the world government and reveal the secrets of the Void Century. This is a bit more cliche than the series typically gets. For a story that makes it seem like any person could follow their dreams and change the world, potentially turning Luffy into a messianic-like figure is a bit of a mixed messaging. The idea that Luffy could in some way be destined to fulfill this role goes against his main motivation of being free. Okay, I will agree to the Joy Boy part of that. That was a step too far. I blame that on Oda having written himself into a corner with how powerful Kaido was and how much more powerful Luffy had to become to match him. I am not the biggest fan of the Joy Boy thing. Though it doesn't ruin the story for me, I'll admit I was kind of like, that isn't for me. However, you can't deny that Luffy has always had a hint of destiny to him. From the time he reached Logtown, people noticed his similarities to Roger, how he smiled on the execution platform.
Lieutenant, think back. Have you ever seen any pirates who smiled on the execution platform? That Straw Hat man smiled. I saw it. He smiled just like Gold Roger 22 years ago. Just like the old king of the pirates did.
How he spoke to the bartender who knew Roger. And anyone who meets him who also knew Roger always comments on how he's carrying Roger's will, including the lighthouse keeper, Dr. Kureha, Whitebeard himself, and Rayleigh, the second in command of Roger's ship, who commented that the straw hat Luffy wears suits a man like him. Which is unique because Rayleigh knows the straw hat once belonged to the king of the pirates.
That straw hat you wear? It suits a fearless man like yourself quite well. Yes, I wanted to meet you. Monkey D. Luffy.
There has always been a sense of destiny around Luffy. Whitebeard's final speech even stated that one day someone would come and challenge the world to a fight.
The man that Gold D. Roger was waiting for. It's not you, Teach. Not a damn chance.
Huh?
And one day in the future, when we're all dead and gone, someone will arise carrying generations upon generations of our history on his shoulders. and he'll throw down the gauntlet in front of the entire world.
Destiny has always had its place in One Piece. Do I think it goes a little over the top sometimes, with stuff like Luffy's gum fruit actually being a mythical Zoan fruit? Yeah, that might have been a slight jumping of the shark. But to pretend Destiny isn't somewhat involved in Luffy's whole journey? Nah, fam, Luffy was meant to be Pirate King. Luffy was meant to discover what was at the end of the Grand Line. Everyone could feel it in him. Number 4, titles are used to explain power levels. Anime is full of powerful characters, getting illustrious titles that reflect their power. There are a lot of different titles in One Piece: Warlord, Emperor, and Admiral, to name a few. Each one conveys a certain level of strength, and in the pirates' case, a powerful crew. While some characters who bear these titles are fan favorites, they're often used to explain strength rather than display it. While nearly every character with one of these titles is extremely powerful, they're not always demonstrated pulling off feats that go beyond what characters without those titles have done. However, the audience is expected to think of one character as stronger just because they have a higher title. The titles of Warlord, Emperor, and Admiral tell us about what we can expect in terms of power output. It creates a sense of dread when we meet these characters, that they're going to be powerful without having done anything. The title informs us that they are someone who earned that position through their power. Bear in mind that no one takes these titles for themselves. All of them are given because they are earned.
エビ姫忘れておるようじゃな。あやつら、わらわたちが桜花七部会になったのは強さゆえじゃということを。
When Luffy and the crew meet Admiral Aokiji for the first time, all of them immediately become defensive and frightened of him, despite Aokiji being very laid back and lazy. However, when Aokiji does decide to fight them, he demonstrates a power none of them could overcome without even putting up much effort. We're not surprised by this because if he couldn't perform to this level, he certainly couldn't be an admiral. But please, tell me, which characters are you referring to who have not demonstrated feats that befit their title? And please tell me you're not referring to Buggy. If you're actually referring to Buggy the Pirate, you are aware that's part of the joke. That he ended up moving up the ranks and getting all these titles because they assumed he was stronger than he was. Oh man, that's the joke. Buggy gained success accidentally, and he doesn't deserve it and knows he doesn't deserve it. Number 3, hidden family members come out of nowhere. Everyone's got to be related to somebody important. Luffy's family tree is gradually expanded upon through the series, with each member being extremely powerful and relevant in world affairs. Sanji gets a similar treatment, with his family being revealed to be basically mechanized supervillains. 1 or 2 superpowered family members does give a little mystique to these characters' backgrounds. Unfortunately, when every one of them is as powerful as they are, it kind of takes away from what makes them special. Are they strong because of their hard work, or are they just the product of a bloodline? Well, this is actually a question One Piece is working to answer. The will of D. The middle initial D seems to appear every now and then for certain characters. All of Luffy's family carry the initial D, as well as some other characters who aren't related to him, like Jaguar D. Saul, Marshall D. Teach, and Goldie Roger. No one is quite sure what the will of D is, but it's one of One Piece's great mysteries. Does the fact that all of Luffy's family carry this initial mean they are passing down power? Or is it just that his ancient will is passed down instead of and has nothing to do with power? I mean, after all, Jaguar D. Saul was not necessarily overly powerful. He was bested quite easily by Aokiji. So it's not that D just gives power. Plus, we can have to consider that Luffy underwent extensive training throughout his childhood. He sparred with Ace and Sabo, getting consistently beaten by them, mind you, survival training under Garp and Dadan, and being inspired by Shanks and his crew. Luffy had plenty of training that brought him to where he was, so I doubt it all had to do with just his legendary family or his initial. Had he not gone through all that training and prep work, or the addition of his Devil Fruit power, he probably never would have gotten as good as he was. Number 2, Sanji's nosebleeds are frustrating when they're not annoying. One of the many problematic tropes in anime focused on perverted characters doing whatever they can to peep on women. Sanji's One Piece womanizer. Sanji is One Piece's womanizer, and like his counterparts in other series, he often displays his attraction with an explosive nosebleed. Everything about this trope is uncomfortable and cringeworthy. Beloved characters have flaws to be sure, but Sanji would be better off without this one. The gag has never been funny, and its repeated use has only made it worse. It's been used so frequently that it even sidelights him for an entire arc. Everything about this trope is uncomfortable and cringeworthy? Says who? Why? It's one of the most common tropes in anime. For those unaware, nosebleeds in anime is often used as a stand-in for arousal in male characters. It goes back as far as I think the 50s or 60s. This old Japanese wives' tale goes that if a teenage boy with raging hormones becomes so suddenly aroused that his blood pressure spikes, it could cause a sudden nosebleed. This trope has been shown in various shonen anime, like Naruto whenever he uses the sexy jutsu.
子供は寝てる時間。
お色気の術
Soul Eater showed it on a few occasions.
It's okay. Cool guys see naked women all the time. I'm totally used to it.
Of course you are, dear. I'm sure that's why your nose is bleeding.
I know Monster Musume did it at least once or twice.
Hey! You don't have to be so mean!
Master Roshi did it, I think, for Bulma.
She said she won't walk with you.
What do you mean?
Well, she said she'd have a much better time if you guys went for a swim instead.
It's a very well-known anime trope. Now, as for Sanji, you say, the gag has never been funny. Dude, I beg to differ. I, for one, found it hilarious. In fact, you know what? How about I provide the context behind the joke? Sanji has always been a flirt and a ladies' man, throwing himself out there to hit on women from the moment we've met him. However, during the 2-year time skip, Sanji was separated from the crew and stuck on an island of transvestites and horrifying-looking hairy men in drag. He spent 2 years there with no actual women and surrounded by some of the most frightening parodies of femininity he'd ever seen. So upon his return to the rest of the world, the sight of real women has made him a bit out of control. Think about a pervert who's going through withdrawal. Like, that's kind of what it was. Unable to prevent himself from getting a nosebleed at just seeing Robin and Nami again, the dude is kind of at a loss because he is so glad to be around women, but he can't look at them without, getting a nosebleed. Now, this would be funny enough, except for the fact that this becomes a major plot point. Sanji's sudden nosebleeds become so frequent and so powerful that he's starting to become anemic. If they go beyond a certain point, he might die. When they get to Fishman Island, a lagoon of mermaids who are fascinated by the pirates want to swim with them, and Sanji is included in this. At first, he's holding himself together, he's doing okay, until the mermaids have to hide him.
Sanji, no!
And one of them puts Sanji's face a little too close to her chest.
Hey, what are...
The innocent mermaid has no idea what she's done, while Sanji is struggling to maintain. But, in the end...
What is that?
Oh, crap! Sanji!
A nosebleed found in the shape of a literal mermaid. I'm sorry, I still bust a gut laughing at that. And yet, it turns into an actual emergency that reveals information about the plot. This epic nosebleed has put Sanji in critical need of a blood transfusion.
There's a law for this, one we've followed for a long time. Fishmen are forbidden to share blood with humans, no matter what. That law sucks! Don't blame me for it. After all, it was humans who set the rule in the first place.
However, a law on Fishman Island says that fishmen are not allowed to give their blood to humans, so they are limited on resources and sources for Sanji's blood type. This starts to reveal the hidden sorrows and tragedies of Fishman Island that the crew will have to deal with, and ties into the climax near the end when Jinbei willingly gives Luffy some of his own blood when it's needed. While used as a joke for laughs, it cleverly tied into the plot of the arc. And, of course, the joke concludes with the realization that the ones who donated blood to Sanji were a pair of transvestites.
Yeah, I almost forgot, Sanji. You haven't met your donors. So here, say hi, and also thank you.
Don't worry, babe. If you want, we can give you more.
Oh, Sanji, you poor bastard. But it gets even funnier, because later, the mermaid princess is revealed, and Sanji at first isn't looking in her direction, but Chopper, the doctor of the crew, knows if Sanji sees her, the nosebleed that results will kill him.
The sight of an average mermaid almost killed you! If you see the mermaid princess, every last drop of blood in your body will spray out your nose like a geyser! And then you'll be dead!
Play the scene.
It's true. I could give up on my dreams and die a coward at a ripe old age. But I'd rather reach for the stars. And die right now!
It's great. I didn't even need to go all into it. I didn't even need to explain all that to you. The trope is just so funny. I felt the need to explain it. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. If you're just offended that Sanji's a pervert, well, go ahead and be offended. Be morally outraged on behalf of all the women Sanji gets aroused by. So long as you realize that none of those anime women know who you are or care that you're sticking up for them, you filthy white knight. Number 1. Red poneglyphs are MacGuffins leading to another MacGuffin. MacGuffins are objects that protagonists search for that really only exist to move the plot forward. The red poneglyphs have acted as the primary MacGuffin in the series, since the beginning of the Four Emperors saga. There is nothing inherently wrong with using a MacGuffin. They're prevalent in all forms of media, but it's a little frustrating when they just lead to another MacGuffin. It's easy to forget sometimes that Luffy's main goal is to find the One Piece. The treasure is essentially the ultimate MacGuffin, and the red poneglyphs are a map to Laptal, the One Piece's supposed location. Fighting over these treasures just to find a larger treasure can distract from the personal conflict that the Straw Hats have developed with their enemies. I am so utterly confused by that last paragraph. Let's try very hard to break this down. Okay, follow me on this, folks. It's easy to forget sometimes that Luffy's main goal is to find the One Piece. Okay, first of all, no, it's not. Seeing as he reminds everyone and anyone about it, but okay, let's go with it. Let's just follow that train of logic. The treasure is essentially the ultimate MacGuffin, and the red poneglyphs are a map to Laptal, the One Piece's supposed location. Correct. The red poneglyphs are the key to reaching the One Piece, and its location. You can think of them as kind of a treasure map to get to the One Piece. An essential tool necessary to reaching the end goal of One Piece. Which you just said we could easily forget that Luffy was looking for it. Wait, if Luffy's looking for the red poneglyphs in order to find the One Piece, then how, therefore, would we forget through that action that he is looking for One Piece? I'm confused. I mean, we could resort that down to Luffy is looking for the map to find One Piece. And by that logic, we could easily forget that he's looking for One Piece? That makes no sense. Moving on. You then say, fighting over these treasures just to find a larger treasure can distract from the personal conflicts the Straw Hats have developed with their enemies. What? I thought you just said that the point of the show was to find the One Piece and we could easily forget that. But now you're saying that the hunt for One Piece is distracting us from the real goal of the show, which is the relationship and conflicts with their enemies. Hold on! I'm so confused! You started this by saying we could easily forget that Luffy wants to get One Piece, and then claim that him looking for it is distracting us from the conflict with his enemies. What do you think this show is about? You can't make up your bloody mind. You also claim that the red poneglyphs are MacGuffins, and they are, but you say they are just a MacGuffin to lead to another MacGuffin. Well, you know, when that other MacGuffin is the very island where the great treasure is located, I wouldn't call that another MacGuffin, I'd call that the end goal. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay, in the future, guys, I plan to do a whole video where I break down why One Piece is, from my way of thinking, the best anime out there. It might not be your favorite, and I understand that, but I do think it is one of the best, if not the best. Every show and anime will have flaws or issues, and I of course can see a few in One Piece. I confess that I did prefer One Piece's pre-time skip for the most part. I also confess that I found a lot of the Four Emperors saga to be a little lackluster in some areas. The arcs kept flowing into each other without giving the crew time to rest or allow the audience to breathe a little between huge conflicts. And Luffy's new Nika form is, in a word, a deus ex machina in the highest sense. And it is very apparent that Oda wrote himself into a corner and had to come up with something to bail Luffy out. Don't get me wrong, I think it's cool. I really like the idea behind it, and it makes some degree of sense. It's not like I'm looking at it going, "No, this can't work." No, it works, but I recognize it's a deus ex machina. And I am willing to acknowledge flaws in One Piece, okay? I'm willing to look at it and say there are issues here, and there are even some I find annoying. Please don't think that I cannot. Like, for example, there's the part of Skypiea where they're climbing up the beanstalk like Giant Jack to go after Inaru and the bell. Jesus, that took forever. I was like, get on. Even the voice actors said that was a difficult part to get through because it just lasted so long. Yeah, that's one that I can easily skip, okay? Man. But I'll tell you all that to make the point that I can be objective. I can look at One Piece and say, yeah, there's some parts of it that annoy me. But this whole list that I just read to you feels like the author personally had annoyances with One Piece and wanted to imply that those annoyances are shared by everyone. Well, newsflash, they're not. But I'd say that about does it for this video. This one was not nearly as bad as the fantasy one, but as a fan of One Piece, I did feel the need to address this and come to some of the points here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that you guys will join me again in my next video where I will see you... I kind of messed up my own ending line there. Whatever. Take care, guys.